BMW has made 5 critical mistakes, and now that's why their used cars are so cheap. Let's get into it now. The first big mistake BMW made was the introduction of far too many recyclable plastics. A lot of these BMWs these days use excess amounts of plastic. If you look at cars from 30 years ago, they didn't. But things started to change around the E92 generation and E90s, and all of a sudden you started seeing introduction of electric water pumps, electric thermostats, electric everything, parts on the ends of the radiators, parts everywhere, under the hood, on top, around, and in many cases, even pans are now starting to be made of plastics. But it's all of that plastic under the hood has now introduced a whole new series of issues they never contended with 15, 20, 30 years ago. But now plastics are known for some major catastrophic issues. You know, I had a BMW N54 powered 335 that had plastics everywhere. And the worst part is the electric water pump would melt down, the thermostat would go. And a lot of the other parts under the hood, even their twin turbo V8s in their 4.4 liter N63, lots of problems. Why? The twin turbo meant 2 turbos in the hot V, and all of a sudden you had plastics melting, wiring looms, and everything underneath started to melt down. Even the valve guides started to melt. There wasn't enough shielding, and all of that plastic started to take a toll. Plastics aren't cheap like they should be. That's the whole intent. Create something that's lighter, more economical, but when it comes time to replace those melting plastics, they're not saving you any money. And that alone has been one of the biggest demises. The latest generation, you have the B48, which is the 2-liter turbo 4, and you have the B58, which is the 3-liter turbocharged inline 6, one of their best engines. And they've replaced a couple of components. Heat encapsulation means that they maintain more of that heat. They don't allow the heat swings as much to impact the rest of the engine. On top of it as well, they went back to a mechanical water pump because the electric water pump was failure prone. So they've learned from few of their mistakes, but unfortunately, till this point, there's been so many bad reputations and problematic drivetrains simply because the overuse of plastics. Another issue comes in the way of why would you buy any of these used BMWs when in fact it could cost you about the same much on a monthly payment to get yourself a brand new one. These vehicles change drastically, so aggressively that many people don't even want to buy the old products. On top of it, it's the financial end of it. A lot of the mistakes that BMWs has made in the sales of a lot of their new cars has impacted the used car market drastically to the point where nobody's buying used cars when they get a new one for the same price. See, a big problem is all of these new vehicles hit the lot. There's hundreds of these vehicles on every single lot. You get new X3s, X4s, you get new 3 Series, 4 Series, 5 Series cars, and everything just continually piles on the lot. By the end of the year, they want to push them out the door. Every calendar year event, they want to push them out the door. And all of these cars have strong incentives. So what does that mean for all of the used inventory that sits on the lot? They don't sell. People would much rather go down, sit and get an interest rate of 0% or 0.49% and also get loyalty bonus discounts. They get all kinds of deductions and money off loyalty incentives. Like I've been getting many invites from BMW dealers that said, come on down. Let's show you the new unveiling. Let's show you the new products. We'll give you all kinds of great opportunities to get a great discount, to get a great deal. And a lot of people get sucked in, they get pulled in, they attend these events, they see the new shiny tech, the new flash and dash, they get all of the incentives, aggressive lease rates, finance rates, which means that sometimes people who are on a monthly budget can find themselves spending more on a used car than they would on a brand new one. Most people keep their cars only 3 to 4 years anyway, and so ultimately many people find themselves literally buying new instead. It saves them money and they've got the latest and greatest, and there's a peace of mind. No more reliability issues, who cares? It's a new car and it's gone in 3 years anyway. That's why the used car market is suffering so bad, because of strong and aggressive incentives for leases and finance and discounts. You just can't help but buy the new BMW. The next big mistake BMW's been making is too drastic of a change in too short of a time. They failed to look at what Porsche has done in the 911 for so long and found success by making small, minute little changes to keep the brand stringing along. But instead, when you look at each model, it's gone drastic changes. And while that may sell cars short-term, long-term, it doesn't give the brand the identity that a lot of customers want. This here is the new iX3. This is the 50 generation. It's a plug-in and essentially is the new series, a new generation of what you can expect for the new 3 Series car. Look at the front of this. How much has that actually changed? People getting tired of the old grills? Look at the change. This change means that the identity is kind of lost. This new generation iX3 and X3 platforms are going to look vastly different. The grill's different, the headlights are different. Look at that. The kidney grills are there, but they're vastly different. Look around the side. Sure, you get the laser cut wheels and the great calipers, but look, you get the pull-in type of door handles, and you get the massive glass on top there. It's quite a departure from the older X3s. And while the regular X3s here still have a slight semblance to the older model, it still has a bit of a pull-up handle. It still has a look that still looks a little bit like the older models. I mean, just take a look at the front grille. Again, vastly different than the older X3. It's a matter of modernization. Yes, in fact, that's a big thing. But like Porsche 911, they do small, subtle touches, and that's a big reason why they've succeeded. That's why Ferrari always looks fairly the same, because they haven't changed things drastically. But BMW, when they're making their changes, and some people love the fresh designs, the fact is the identity is lost. And that means the old cars are basically orphaned. And then you compare it to some of the outgoing X3s, and it looks vastly different. The front grills actually have a look to them. They look like a standard kidney grill. Of course, you get the angel eyes, and even though they're LEDs, they definitely still have sort of the older outgoing look. They still have a fairly generic, well-built, structurally sound type of product built into it. Look, the taillights, sure, your LEDs, they've updated them. The older previous generation X3, this one here with the 30i effectively is the B48, and that's one of their best engines and drivetrains. These older models have changed too much, and every model has gone through not incremental changes, but drastic changes. The 7 Series looks absolutely nothing like the older outgoing generations, and while some people like the futuristic design of it, the big bold grills, the small little headlights, and it's very long, bold, sleek, big glass on top, and look at the door handles, very slick looking there. It is kind of an interesting looking polarizing vehicle, but here we've got the 760 BMW X-Drive right here, and yeah, you get the great tailpipes down there below, but all the LEDs and shiny and gloss means that it's definitely got a new look. The inside is basically side to side, you get the full screen, and they've changed so much you would never recognize that if you weren't following closely. And when people think of the 3 Series, you know, they think small, compressed kidney grills and the beautiful little LEDs. But then they go and do this with the 4 Series cars. They put these big buck tooth. That has too much of a drastic change. Same thing goes with the something smaller like a 430 or 440. And those changes have gone too aggressively to the point where, sure, they're unique. They sort of have a look of their own, but people that want to buy an older M4 or an older 4 Series cars no longer can relate to the new product. It totally differentiates itself in a way that a lot of customers don't necessarily love. Even the brand new BMW M5 hybrid, twin turbo V8, ferocious acceleration, and you can make every argument that this is the best on paper BMW M5 that they've ever produced. And yet, so many people would rather go to the older generation F90s or even the F10s with the dual clutch gearbox and the S63. Many people would rather go to those older vehicles because they didn't have hybrid. They also kind of look the same with the standard conventional kidney grills, and subtle changes to those would have been probably much more accepted. But instead, you get the big bold headlights, you get these shaded over grills, and it is a unique car, I will give it that. It certainly looks unique. The wheels look a little undersized. You get carbon detailing there. And this one here is a wagon, or essentially a beautiful car that European drivers typically love. LED rear taillights. And look at the back. You get those massive quad tips here. Beautiful. The M5 is absolutely a gem. And I've driven every M5 from the E39 to the E60 M5, which I currently own with the glorious V10, which will never be replicated again. I've also driven the F10 with the dual clutch and the manual gearbox. And the F90 is a win too, because you can switch that all-wheel drive system and it's a ferocious accelerating machine. And then this came out. See, the changes have been pretty aggressive, all for the sake of innovation. But where Porsche 911 is, they constantly do these little subtle changes, and some manufacturers stick with what they know and don't change it too much. Look at Toyota, look at Lexus. They stick with the success and they only make subtle changes. When they know it works, why change it? The next problem that BMW's created is the sheer complexity. Complexity just means expensive repairs, problems you can't do it yourself anymore. Other than special vehicles like the M2 right here, where it has the glorious S58, this one actually comes equipped with a manual 6-speed gearbox. Oh, this is a juicy car. This is a rear-wheel drive, exceptionally quick, fun, furious, And while there's some technology buried under there, it still has simplicity. Now, no BMW is going to be considered a simple vehicle, but with all of the modern day vehicles that deviate away from the simplicity that BMWs used to be of the ultimate driving machine, now you get all these vehicles today. Almost everything is hybrid, electric, some variation, twin turbos, direct fuel injection, and it means a lot of these vehicles are setting up for failure. You can't fix half of it because even the right to repair is going away, and you need expensive diagnostic equipment to fix a lot of these vehicles. The worst part is vehicles that were once known for great driving experiences, like an E39 is probably one of the best, including as well as the E60 M5 were the best M5s because they were still relatively analog. Yes, you had space shuttle levels of technology buried in the E60 M5, but even the E39 with an NA V8 and the E39 and the E60 had the NA V10 under the hood. Things have changed. Now in the latest generation, you have all-wheel drive systems, you have hybrid drive systems, you have twin turbo V8 systems, you have all of the modern tech and modules. You've probably got hundreds of electrical modules in here controlling everything from ABS to wheel controls to sensors on your heads-up display to everything in between. And it just means that any one of those sensors, it could mean $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 worth of repairs. Try to fix it yourself. Good luck with that. But the fact remains is, unless you go with a very entry-level car like a 330, like a 340, or some variation of the simpler models, you're likely going to be welcome to vehicles that are going to have ride height. You're going to have self-leveling systems in the X5s, and certainly in the 7 Series cars. You're going to have all of the big full-screen displays, all of the modern technology that everybody's asking for. But the unfortunate reality is all that's going to come at a cost. The complexity at a $220 an hour shop rate to get started, just to diagnose it, they're going to charge you $500 to check in what that check engine light is. And next thing you know, you're out the door with a $3,000-$4,000 bill for something that seemed relatively minor. You had one little glitch or a little light that came up and the car was running perfectly fine. And yet you took it in just because your due diligence, and all of a sudden all that complexity means forget it, you couldn't troubleshoot it. But unfortunately the dealer did, and they handed you a bill for $5,000. Fifth big mistake that BMW's made, the cost of any major repair could literally decimate and wipe out the vehicle. You could literally write off its value in one failure. A lot of the older used BMWs depreciate hard, like a lot of modern luxury cars. All of a sudden you find yourself with a car that was $80,000 brand new, and all of a sudden it's $12,000. You take your car in because it's acting weird and misfiring, you take it in there, they tell you some injectors are gone, the high pressure fuel pump is gone, and you also have a module, by the way, that's not working right. Next thing you know, they hand you a quote for $14,500, and it's not even about the engine, because fundamentally a lot of these engines now have been vastly improved. The EB48 is vastly better than the older outgoing N20s. The B58 is an absolute gem now by today's standards. They've eliminated some of the big problems. 1 turbo now instead of 2. They've also got heat encapsulation, better fuel system bottom end, and of course, no electrical water pumps, and they're much better than they used to be. But unfortunately, it's all the added technology, and it's the things around it. It's the expensive shop rate, it's the repairs of expensive components, modules, screens, and some of the other electrics. On some of the older BMWs, water pumps, fuel injectors, you name it, start to add up. You know, you do a water pump thermostat combination on an older N55, $2,000 to $2,500 just to do a maintenance item. Then all of a sudden you do a set of brakes because it's time. Now all of a sudden you're $1,500 plus $2,500, you're $4,000 or $5,000 just to do a little bit of maintenance. And if you can't do it yourself, literally you could almost write off the value of many slightly older used BMWs. Hence why a lot of people just don't see the value. Many people just decide to buy new, lease it, toss it after 3 years, and call it a day. A lot of people do find value in some of the older used BMWs. As a matter of fact, as I walk around on this lot, I'll be the first to admit, some of the new models are actually very intriguing. The M5 looks better in person. The iX3, not sold yet. But I do love some of these models, I'm not gonna lie. And you know what, I'll probably wait a couple of years and I may come in and scoop some of these up for pennies on the dollars. Many of these used BMWs are cheap after 4 or 5 years. There's a strong number of reasons why that is. But in fact, it also represents a phenomenal deal for those people who have testicular fortitude, strong of heart, and a little bit of DIY skills. With all of that said, right there, the only BMWs I would probably likely buy. And right there, maybe one of their strongest competitors, Lexus. The only cars I would buy from them too. Not all 2 Lexus are the same as well. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Bye-bye.